The first time I saw the file, I knew two things: it shouldn't exist, and it already knew my name. The screen flickered like it was deciding whether I deserved the information. Green text on black, old school. The kind of interface people used when they didn't want to be traced or remembered. The bar around me hummed with low neon and bad intentions. No windows, no clocks, just recycled air that smelled like ozone, spilled alcohol, and secrets that had gone stale. I rolled my shoulder once. Slow. Tension had settled into my neck the way it always did before a job. Tight, familiar, almost comforting. Adrenaline wasn't a spike for me. It was maintenance, like oil in an engine that never quite shut off. "File's clean," the bartender said without looking at me. That alone was a lie. Nothing that landed on my table was ever clean. The bartender slid the glass over anyway. I didn't drink it. I was too busy staring at the gaps on the screen. Whole sections were missing. Not redacted. Deleted. As if someone had taken a careful knife and cut out the parts that explained why. No client name. No jurisdiction. No timeline. Just a designation and a payout that made my jaw tighten. Objective: infrastructure liquidation. Status: non-existent. Risk level: classified. I hated that word. Object: it stripped the blood and breath out of whatever you were about to destroy. Made it easier to sleep later. Or pretend you did. I leaned back in the chair, letting it creak just enough to be rude. Infrastructure doesn't need this much money. The bartender's reflection in the mirror met my eyes. Old scar at the jaw. The kind that came from a choice, not an accident. This one does. I felt it then. Not fear. Something worse. Recognition. The itch crawled under my skin, right along my spine. Sharp and insistent. My fingers twitched like they were looking for a trigger that wasn't there. I flexed my hand, then my jaw. Told my body to shut up. It didn't listen. I scrolled down. The cursor hesitated for half a second before moving, like it was waiting for permission. The file opened a subsection on its own. Assembly site: unknown. Composition: variable. Termination method: external. External. Not collapse. Not containment. Not retrieval. Elimination. Cute trick, I muttered. Let me guess. If I don't take it, someone else will. The bartender shrugged. You always say that, and I'm always right. That was the part I hated most. Not the violence, not the mess, but the way jobs like this chose me. Like a bad habit that learned how to dial my number. I told myself I didn't trust anyone, that I worked alone by design. Truth was, I trusted patterns. And this pattern was wrong, which meant it was mine. I closed the file without accepting it. The screen didn't go dark. It stayed open, patient. My reflection stared back at me from the black glass. Beta, no marks, no visible ties. Clean on the surface. I wondered, not for the first time, how many parts of me had been quietly deleted along the way. Get me a workspace, I said finally. And don't insult me with amateurs. The bartender smiled, thin and knowing. Already did. The file chimed once, soft as a pulse. I exhaled through my nose, the itch flaring bright under my skin. Whatever this thing was, whatever they were calling an object now, it had already reached out. And against my better judgment, I reached back. The underground range was quieter than it had any right to be. No ricochet screams, no macho commentary echoing off concrete, just the low, disciplined thud of sound dampeners doing their job. The air smelled like oil, cold metal, and something faintly sweet I couldn't place. Not pheromones. Not exactly. The workshop opened off the range like a surgeon's annex. Long steel tables, white task lights, every surface clean enough to reflect my face back at me in fractured lines. Explosives were laid out with almost insulting care. Charges aligned by size and purpose. Detonators coiled neatly, wires color-coded. No excess length. Tools placed at precise angles, like someone had stopped mid-breath, and everything froze where it belonged. Luke didn't look up when I walked in. He stood over the table, sleeves rolled to the forearms, hands bare. No gloves. That alone told me more than any resume. His fingers moved with the kind of confidence that came from repetition, not arrogance. Precision born of knowing exactly how much pressure would end a room. Omega, I said, because that's what the file had marked him as, not as a test, just a fact. Yes, he replied, soft and even. No challenge, no apology. His voice didn't match the work. It was calm, almost gentle, the kind people lean toward without realizing it. His hands, on the other hand, were assembling a shaped charge that could peel a reinforced door like fruit skin. He finally looked up. Brown eyes. Steady. Assessing. But not invasive. He took me in the way professionals do. Height, weight, posture, breathing. Then went back to his work. You're late, he said. I'm on time, I corrected. You're early. A corner of his mouth twitched. Barely. I circled the table slowly. Not to intimidate. Habit. The itch under my skin stirred again. Curious this time. Luke didn't react. No flare of Omega affect. No subconscious reach. No performance. That absence was loud. You don't ask what the job is, I noted. I read what I needed, he said, threading a wire with surgical calm. Infrastructure. External termination. Unstable variables. I waited. That's enough, he added. I huffed a quiet laugh. You know, most people would want assurances. Most people don't get hired for this, he said. They get hired to feel important. I stopped pacing. That one landed closer than I liked. Why were you kicked out? I asked. His hands paused for exactly 1 second. Not hesitation. Calculation. Because I don't improvise, he said. And they wanted spectacle. Fair. I watched him finish the charge. No wasted motion. No tremor. His control wasn't rigid. It was fluid. Like water finding the cleanest path through a crack. You don't smell nervous, I said before I could stop myself. There it was. The irritation, not at him, at me. At the way my attention kept orbiting, uninvited. Luke met my eyes again. This time, he held the look. I don't perform, he said mildly. If that's a problem, say it now. It wasn't. That was the problem. I leaned back against the table, arms crossed. You follow instructions? I follow physics, he replied. People lie. A beat. Good answer, I said. He slid the completed charge aside and finally wiped his hands on a cloth, methodical. Still no scent spike. Still no reach. Interest, I realized, didn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just sat there, quiet and dangerous. Pack your tools, I said. We move tonight. Luke nodded once. No smile. No questions. As I turned to leave, his voice followed me, soft, precise. Row. I paused. If this infrastructure starts acting like something else, he said, you should tell me. I didn't ask how he knew my name. That somehow felt like the least strange part. The warehouse had been dead for at least a decade, which made it perfect. No active grid, no cameras worth hacking, just a ribcage of steel beams and cracked concrete, lit by portable lamps that threw long, nervous shadows. Rain dripped through holes in the roof, slow and irregular, like the building was counting something. I arrived first. That was rule 1. Always be the constant in a room full of variables. The mercenary showed up next. Broad shoulders, military posture, eyes that never stopped moving. He didn't give a name, just a nod and a glance at the exits. Pragmatic, efficient, the kind of man who survived by treating every situation like it might need to be burned down in 10 seconds or less. The tech came in through a side door, hood up, face forgettable by design. No markings, no tells. A ghost, with a tablet. I'd hired them twice before under different aliases. Never asked questions. They never stayed after the job. The sniper arrived last. That was intentional. On both our parts. Lean build, long coat despite the heat. Fingers resting wrong on the rifle case. Not unsafe. Just trained somewhere else. Different doctrine. Different ghosts. 4 strangers. One mistake away from becoming a statistic. Luke was already there. He stood near a stack of rusted crates, tools laid out on a fold-out table like he was back in his workshop. separate, not isolated, by choice. He acknowledged each arrival with a glance, then returned to calibrating something small and precise. He didn't scan the room, didn't posture, didn't care. That alone made him the most dangerous person there. Ground rules, I said, once everyone had settled into their version of alert. My voice carried easily in the hollow space. No real names, no history, no attachments. The mercenary grunted approval. The tech didn't look up. The sniper's jaw tightened, just enough. This is a temporary team, I continued. You don't bond, you don't pry, and you don't die for each other unless it serves the exit strategy. A pause. I let it stretch. If anyone feels heroic, I added, leave now. Saves me paperwork. No one moved. Good. I outlined roles, routes, fallbacks, kept the objective vague by design, infrastructure, access points, external termination, clean lines on a dirty map. Control felt good in my mouth. Solid, reliable, fake. Eyes kept drifting toward Luke. The mercenary clocked him as a specialist. The sniper watched his hands. The tech tried, and failed, to place him in a pattern. Luke ignored all of it, focused on his work, Omega status sitting on him like an unclaimed coat. I caught myself tracking his breathing. I didn't like that. Questions? I asked. The sniper cleared his throat. What happens if the structure pushes back? Luke answered before I could. Then it isn't a structure. Every head turned. He didn't look up, just tightened a screw with delicate force. Silence settled, thick and uneasy. Anything else? I said, sharper than intended. No one spoke. We dispersed to prep. The illusion of order snapped back into place. People liked believing plans were shields. I'd sold that lie more times than I could count. As I moved past Luke, he slid a device into a case and closed it with a soft click. You're building redundancies, he said quietly. Not a question. Always, I replied. They won't hold if this turns social, he added. I stopped. There it was. The crack. I should have dismissed it. Should have trusted the plan. Instead, I found myself nodding once. I know, I said. And for the first time since the file had found me, I realized something worse than fear had crept in. I trusted the Omega with steady hands more than the blueprint in my head. The forest thinned out too neatly. Trees gave way in straight lines, as if someone had planned their retreat decades ago, and the land had complied out of fear. Steel ribs rose between trunks, old industrial architecture grafted onto the landscape, concrete half swallowed by moss and time. Floodlights sat dark and watchful, like blind eyes that still knew where to look. We moved in silence. Rain had started sometime after dusk, fine and persistent, muting our steps and blurring the edges of the world. The mercenary took point. The sniper melted into the tree line. The tech ghosted behind us, hands already dancing over their tablet. Luke walked at my side, not close enough to touch, close enough that I could feel the absence of noise around him. No rustle, no uneven breath, just controlled motion. It set my nerves on edge. Cameras are live. The tech whispered in my ear. Old system, easy loop. Do it, I murmured. The feed cut. The perimeter lights stayed dark. Everything behaved exactly as expected. That should have reassured me. Instead, my chest tightened. We crossed the invisible boundary where private land pretended to be wilderness. The itch under my skin flared sharp, crawling up my spine. I slowed without meaning to. My breathing hitched, shallow and quick, like my body had skipped ahead in the timeline and found something it didn't like. Row, Luke said softly, not alarmed. Alert. I know, I replied, though I didn't know what. The first diversion went off clean. Too clean. A muted charge bloomed against the outer fence. No flash, no roar. Just a controlled sigh as reinforced steel parted exactly where Luke had promised it would. The mercenary slipped through, efficient and precise. Then the cameras shifted, not reset, not rebooted. They tracked. Tech? I hissed. I didn't touch them, came the reply, thin with confusion. They're adjusting on their own. the lenses tilted, following our movement through the trees, anticipation written into their angles. My hearing sharpened suddenly, picking up distant hums beneath the rain, power cycling somewhere deep in the complex, like a heartbeat picking up pace. This wasn't protocol. Move, I ordered. Pulse hammering. Now. We advanced. Faster. The ground dipped, funneling us toward a concrete access corridor half buried in earth. The walls were too smooth, too intentional. I brushed my hand along one as we passed, and a shock ran up my arm, not electric. Familiar. My breath came hard. Sounds layered over each other, every footstep too loud, every whisper amplified. My body was reacting like it remembered the path. Luke noticed. "This isn't a security system," he said quietly, kneeling to inspect a panel that hadn't been in the schematics. His fingers hovered, then pulled back. "Or not just one." "What is it?" the mercenary snapped. Luke looked up at me instead. "Biological patterns," he said. "Social response. The layout isn't meant to stop intruders, it's meant to recognize them." A chill slid down my spine. "You're saying the building knows we're here," I said. "I'm saying it knows who is here," Luke replied. "And it's adjusting accordingly." The cameras paused. Then, almost gently, they realigned, not toward the mercenary, not toward the sniper, but toward me. The forest went quiet. Too quiet. I swallowed, forcing air into my lungs, fighting the pull of something deep and instinctive. Pack memory. Formation. Roles I hadn't worn in years clawed their way up through muscle and bone. "Row," Luke said again, closer now. Steady. Anchoring. "Whatever this place is doing, it's not mechanical." I met his eyes, rain slicking my lashes. "I know," I said hoarsely. The breach hadn't been the fence. It had been me. We pulled back to a temporary shelter carved into the hillside, an old service bunker that smelled like damp concrete and rusted cables. The kind of place meant to hold machines, not people. Portable lights cast a dull yellow glow, turning everyone's face a little stranger than before. No one spoke at first. That was never a good sign. The tech broke the silence with a quiet curse, fingers flying over the tablet. "I'm seeing discrepancies. Timestamps that don't line up. Data packets rerouting themselves. Meaning?" the mercenary asked. "Meaning someone's either leaking," the tech said, "or the system is learning faster than it should." The sniper shifted his weight. A small movement, but I clocked it. He'd done it twice already tonight, always after we changed routes. Little habits like that got people killed. I felt the room tighten. Fault lines forming under our feet. "Everybody check your gear," I said. "And your assumptions." The mercenary snorted. "That's comforting. Comfort gets you sloppy." Luke sat apart from the rest of us, back against the wall, calmly disassembling and reassembling a detonator. Click, turn, set. His presence was oddly quiet. No defensive posture, no omega tells. Just focus, which made him an easy target. "You're awfully calm for someone whose toys just woke up a building," the sniper said, eyes flicking toward Luke. Luke didn't look up. "They didn't wake it," he replied. "They introduced us. That's supposed to make me feel better?" The sniper shot back. "No," Luke said mildly. "Just accurate." I held up a hand before the exchange could turn sharp. "Enough." The team scattered to busy themselves, checking weapons, muttering into comms, pretending not to watch each other. I waited until the noise thinned, then moved toward Luke. "Walk," I said quietly. He stood without comment and followed me down a narrow side corridor where the light flickered and the sound of rain filtered through concrete like static. We stopped where the shadows were thick enough to feel private. I crossed my arms. "You knew this wasn't standard." "Yes. You didn't say anything." "I did," he replied. "You hired me anyway." That annoyed me more than it should have. "You ever think about giving people a little more warning?" I asked. Luke met my eyes. No defensiveness. No apology. Just stillness. "You don't listen to warnings," he said. "You listen to outcomes." I opened my mouth to argue, then stopped. "Damn it," That wasn't an accusation, he added. It's a skill, just not a gentle one. I exhaled through my nose, a sharp huff that almost turned into a laugh. You always talk like that, like you're reading an instruction manual for humans? Only when they insist on pushing the wrong buttons, he said. There it was. The humor. Dry, unassuming, cutting just enough to bleed tension instead of skin. I leaned back against the wall, feeling the buzz in my limbs settle into something more manageable. There's a leak, I said. Or something pretending to be one. Luke nodded once. Both can exist at the same time. You're not worried? I'm cautious, he corrected. Worry wastes motion. Silence stretched between us, not awkward, not empty, just there. I realized uncomfortably that I believed him, not completely, not yet, but enough that the edge of my suspicion dulled. A millimeter, maybe less. Get some rest, I said finally. We move again in 20. Luke tilted his head. You don't sleep. I didn't say I would. That earned me the faintest smile, gone almost before it appeared. As he walked back toward the others, I stayed where I was, listening to the rain and the hum of a place that didn't want us gone. The cracks were spreading, and for the first time I wasn't sure the plan was what needed fixing. The underground level felt wrong the moment we stepped into it. Not dangerous. Familiar. The corridor sloped downward in a gradual curve, walls lined with composite panels that absorbed sound instead of reflecting it. Our boots made almost no noise. Every breath felt louder than it should have. Minimal chatter, I whispered. No one argued. Luke knelt at the access junction, already unpacking his kit. The lighting down here was low and even, designed to keep stress responses flat. I hated whoever had planned that. 2 minutes, the tech murmured. Maybe less. Luke shook his head once. 3. If we want it quiet. Quiet is good, I said, eyes scanning the corridor. The sniper took position without instruction. The mercenary covered the rear. No orders needed. My body slid into alignment, like it had been waiting for the cue. I watched Luke work. He moved with surgical intent, every motion economical. No wasted gestures. No rushing. His fingers adjusted the microcharge placement by fractions of an inch, compensating for pressure differentials in the wall that I wouldn't have noticed if I'd lived 3 lifetimes. A sensor pinged somewhere above us. Movement, the tech whispered. Hold, Luke said softly. I didn't question it, didn't hesitate. I shifted my stance, raised my weapon, let my breathing slow to match the space. Peripheral awareness sharpened, every angle, every shadow mapped in my head. Pack, the thought came unbidden. Not the word, but the shape of it. Roles settling into place. Coverage overlapping. Trust implicit and absolute. I hadn't felt that in years. A shape flickered at the end of the corridor. Automated drone. Wrong size. Wrong response curve. It paused, sensors sweeping. I stepped forward without thinking, drawing its attention with a deliberate scrape of my boot. The drone oriented on me, lights flaring. Row, Luke murmured. Not alarmed. Precise. I know, I said. I fired once. Not to destroy, but to redirect. The round sparked against the wall, sending the drone's targeting logic into a brief spiral. It recalibrated toward me, exactly as planned. Behind me, Luke finished the placement. Done, he said. Clear, I snapped. We moved as one. The mercenary dragged the tech back. The sniper shifted positions, rifle already tracking secondary threats. The explosion didn't sound like an explosion. It was a pressure change, a controlled release. The wall folded inward on itself with a dull, heavy sigh, sealing the corridor behind us, even as it opened the path forward. No fire, no shrapnel, just clean, decisive transformation. For half a second, there was nothing. No alarms, no movement, no reaction. Silence dropped over us like a held breath. I stood there, heart hammering, senses still flared, waiting for the crash of consequences that didn't come. My body buzzed with the afterimage of coordination, the echo of belonging. Luke looked up at me from where he'd braced himself, eyes steady, unshaken. You didn't overcompensate, he said. Most people do. Most people panic, I replied. And you? He asked. I considered the question, then shook my head. I remember. Something unreadable passed across his expression. Not pity, not fear, understanding. The silence stretched another beat, fragile and complete. Then, the system exhaled. Lights shifted. Power rerouted. Somewhere deeper in the structure, something noticed the change. The moment ended. I turned away first, forcing the past back into its box. Move, I said. But as we advanced into the newly opened passage, I couldn't shake the feeling that the explosion hadn't been the most dangerous thing we'd triggered. It was the way my body had known exactly where everyone belonged, and how easily it had slipped back into place. The central node didn't look like a command center. No towering servers, no blinking walls of data, just a wide circular chamber carved deep into the earth, lined with translucent partitions that pulsed faintly with light. The air was warmer here, humid in a way that had nothing to do with machinery. I knew it before anyone said it. Ro, the tech whispered, voice tight. These aren't processors. The partitions shifted, responding to our presence. Shapes moved behind them, slow, uncertain. Human silhouettes. Alive. My stomach dropped hard, like I'd missed a step on a staircase that never ended. Open one, I said. That's a bad idea, the mercenary muttered. I didn't ask. The tech hesitated, then swiped a command. One partition slid aside with a soft hiss. Inside was a man. Young, too thin. Electrodes traced along his neck and collarbones like veins drawn by someone who'd never seen a body outside a diagram. His eyes lifted at the sound, unfocused, but searching. He looked past us, toward me. The itch under my skin flared into something hot and vicious. This isn't infrastructure, the sniper said slowly. No, Luke replied, stepping closer. His voice stayed even, but his jaw tightened. This is containment. More partitions opened as if encouraged. More faces, different ages, different builds, all marked, all tethered to something unseen, a web of soft lights threading between chambers. A pack, engineered, monitored, stripped down to function. I felt sick. Experimental social clustering, the tech said, horror bleeding through professionalism. They're testing behavioral synchronization, stress response, obedience. Using people, the mercenary spat. Using us, my body whispered back. Memory slammed into me, not images, but sensations. The press of proximity. The wrong comfort of shared breath. Orders that felt like instincts. The way choice blurred until it vanished. I staggered back a step. That's why it reacted to you, Luke said quietly. Not accusing, observing. You're in its pattern. Before I could respond, the room changed. A soft chime echoed overhead. Friendly, reassuring. The sniper raised his weapon too late. I'm sorry, he said. I turned just in time to see him pivot, rifle swinging, not toward the partitions, but toward the tech. One clean shot. The tablet shattered. The tech went down in a spray of sparks and blood. The mercenary roared and lunged. But the sniper was already moving, backing toward a side exit that hadn't been on our map. Contract's been amended, the sniper called out, breathless and wild-eyed. They want you contained, Ro. Always did. Contained. The words scraped something raw inside me. I fired. Missed. On purpose or instinct. I wasn't sure. He disappeared through the door as alarms finally screamed to life. Red light flooding the chamber. The partitions brightened, the people inside them stirring, voices rising in confusion and fear. I stood there, shaking. This is on me, I said hoarsely. Luke was beside me in an instant, a steady presence amid the chaos. It's on whoever built this, he said. And whoever sold you the lie. I ran, I snapped, anger turning inward, corrosive. Last time I ran. I left them. Luke didn't argue, didn't soothe. That's why it hurts, he said simply. Because you know what it costs. The alarms climbed higher. The system tightened its grip. The living heart of the place beat faster. trying to pull itself together around a familiar shape. Around me. I looked at the faces behind the glass again. People reduced to components, to objects. Rage burned through the nausea, sharp and clarifying. The lie wasn't the job. It was the idea that this had ever been empty. We barricaded ourselves in a monitoring room just off the central node. Reinforced glass on 3 sides. Old observation equipment bolted into the walls. Dark now except for a single active screen pulsing with biometric readouts. Heart rates, proximity metrics, lines spiking and dipping in patterns that made my stomach twist. The system was still watching. I leaned my forehead against the cold glass and laughed once, short and hollow. I hate rooms like this. Luke shut the door behind us, methodical, checking seals before speaking. Because they're honest, he said. That did it. The past came up like a broken surface tension. No warning, no mercy. I wasn't hired, I said, voice rough. The first time. Luke didn't interrupt. He moved to the far wall and sat, back straight, hands resting loosely in his lap. Present. Contained. They told us it was a pilot program, I continued. Social optimization. Betas were ideal. Flexible, non-disruptive. No leadership markers. No extremes. The word beta tasted wrong in my mouth now. They didn't force the first link, I said. They never do. They let proximity handle it. Sleep deprivation. Shared stress. Reward cycles. My throat tightened. You stop knowing where your impulses end, and the system begins. On the screen, the lines pulsed faster. As if listening. We were efficient, I said bitterly. Smooth. Predictable. A perfect little unit. I told myself it was working because I didn't feel alone. I swallowed hard. They took choice first. Then they took dissent. After that, you don't need walls. Images bled in at the edges of my vision, hands moving in sync, decisions arriving fully formed. The quiet terror of realizing your thoughts weren't entirely yours. The comfort that came with it. That was the worst part. I ran, I said. The words scraped my lungs on the way out. One night the feedback loop glitched. Just long enough. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't look back. I turned from the glass, jaw clenched. I told myself they'd adjust. That someone else would break them out. Silence answered. Luke's eyes didn't leave my face. They didn't, I said. The room felt smaller. The hum of the system crept under my skin, familiar as a pulse. My breath went shallow. My hands curled, nails biting into my palms. I can't do that again, I said. I can't be folded into something I didn't choose. I won't. Luke nodded once. Not agreement. Acknowledgement. You're not just a beta, he said quietly. You never were. The relief that sparked at that, small, dangerous, made me flinch. Don't, I warned. I'm not looking for absolution. I know, he replied. He didn't move closer, didn't offer touch or solutions or reassurances wrapped in pretty language. He let the truth sit between us, heavy and unadorned. That, more than anything, kept me breathing. The alarms outside shifted pitch. The system adjusted again, tightening its net, trying to pull familiar shapes back into alignment. I straightened, wiping a hand over my face. They want me contained, I said. Always did. Luke stood then, smooth and unhurried. And you escaped once, by abandoning them. By surviving, he corrected. Those aren't the same. I shook my head, a sharp denial. Survival isn't enough this time. Luke held my gaze. Then don't survive alone. He didn't tell me what to do. He didn't tell me how to fix it. He just stayed, and in a room designed to erase choice. That mattered more than anything else. The command post had been built to coordinate machines. It showed in the geometry. Clean lines, modular consoles, wide sightlines that assumed compliance. The remaining screens glowed with cascading alerts, trying to impose order on a situation that had already slipped the leash. The mercenary stood near the main console, weapon lowered but ready. Blood streaked his sleeve where the sniper's shot had grazed him earlier. He hadn't said a word since. Luke leaned against the wall, arms loose at his sides, watching the room the way he watched explosives. Patient, precise, aware of where pressure would break things. The door behind us hissed open. 2 figures entered. Operators I'd pulled from secondary routes. One limping. One pale and wide-eyed. "We're out," the limping one said immediately. "This wasn't the contract. That stopped being true hours ago," I replied. He shook his head. "Doesn't matter. We didn't sign up to fight a system that knows your heartbeat." "Smart," the mercenary muttered. "I'm not asking for permission," the operator said. "Just clearance to leave." The alarms dipped, then rose again, like the place was listening to us negotiate. I glanced at Luke. He didn't nod, didn't shake his head, didn't offer advice. Choice stayed where it belonged. "Go," I said. The operator blinked. "Just like that? No reprisals," I added. "You walk now. You walk clean." The second operator hesitated, eyes flicking to the screens, faces behind glass, lines spiking in distress. His jaw worked. "I can't," he said finally. "I won't." The first man swore under his breath and turned away. The door sealed behind him with a final, irrevocable click. The mercenary stepped closer. "That makes us 3, 4, Luke corrected quietly. Another door chimed. I felt it before I saw it. The wrongness in the air. The shift in pattern. The mercenary stiffened. The sniper emerged from the shadowed corridor, hands raised, expression frantic. "It's not what you think," he said quickly. "They promised extraction, clean slate, said they'd shut it down. After containing me, I said." He swallowed. "You don't understand. This place can't be destroyed. It adapts. The only way to stop it is to stabilize the core, using me." I finished. He nodded. "Desperate. You're already linked. You're the anchor." I felt the pull then, strong and insidious, the old logic sliding back into place. Be useful. Be central. End the chaos by surrendering to it. Fear pressed in from all sides. I thought of the faces behind the partitions, of the way my body had snapped into formation without asking, of how easy it would be to let the system decide again. Luke met my eyes. No pressure, no plea, just presence. I raised my weapon. The sniper flinched and bolted. The mercenary took him down in 2 strides. Clean. Final. Silence fell, thick and ringing. I lowered the gun slowly, heart pounding. Not from fear, but from something steadier. "I'm not the anchor," I said aloud. "More to the room than the people in it. I'm not your solution." The system pulsed, confused. Luke exhaled softly. "That's the choice," he said. I nodded, feeling something settle inside me, not relief, not victory, but alignment. For the first time, I wasn't running from what they'd done to me. I was choosing what they wouldn't get to do again. The facility went into full emergency mode without drama. No blaring sirens, no panicked countdowns, just a subtle shift in pressure. Lights dimming to a clinical blue, corridors reconfiguring with soft mechanical sighs, the kind of calm reserved for systems, confident they still had control. They were wrong. "Lockdown in 30, the mercenary said, reading the cascade of warnings off a cracked console. "After that, exits reroute inward." "Inward is bad," I said. "Very." I took point, not because it was my job, but because it was my responsibility. "Luke," I said, already moving. "Can you cut the control lattice?" "Yes," he replied. No hesitation, "but not from here." "Where?" He tilted his head toward the central node, where the biometric lines still pulsed like a living map. "Core interface." "It's not a switch. It's a conversation." "Of course it is," I muttered. Then, louder, "We're going in." The mercenary grinned, sharp and grim. "About time." We moved fast. Corridors folded open ahead of us as if anticipating our route, trying to funnel, to guide. I ignored the suggestions, cutting left where instinct said right, trusting the echo of old formation memory without surrendering to it. Shards, not a cage, I told myself. Pieces choosing alignment. Drones deployed from ceiling panels. Compact and efficient. The mercenary took 2 out with precise bursts. I disabled another by yanking it into a wall mid-flight, letting momentum do the work. No gore. No glory. just motion and consequence. Luke never ran. He advanced at a steady pace, eyes scanning, hands already prepping a device I didn't recognize. The system reacted to him differently. Hesitant, recalibrating, like it didn't know whether to treat him as threat or variable. Good. At the core chamber, the partitions flickered violently. The people inside stirred, confusion rippling through the web that bound them. The system tightened, trying to compensate. Row, Luke said calmly, kneeling at the interface. I need 90 seconds. You have 60, I replied. Then don't miss. I positioned myself between him and the room. Weapon raised, senses stretched thin. The pull came back stronger now, an invitation, a promise of unity, of relief. I clenched my jaw. No, I said aloud. A wave of pressure slammed into me, not physical, but intimate. Memories surged, commands without words, the comfort of being one of many, instead of alone. I staggered, but didn't fall. The mercenary was there, solid, covering my flank without comment. A choice, not an order. I breathed. Luke's fingers danced across the interface, not forcing it, but guiding, introducing contradictions, breaking loops, severing the false certainty of the system's logic. Almost, he said. The drones hesitated, their movements stuttering as priorities conflicted. Now, I snapped. Luke triggered the final sequence. The change wasn't explosive. It was quiet. The biometric lines collapsed inward, then vanished. The partitions dimmed, restraints disengaging with soft clicks. One by one, the people inside sagged, confused, free. The system tried to recover, tried to latch on to the nearest anchor, me. I stepped forward, heart pounding, and did the one thing it couldn't predict. I refused. I'm not yours, I said, voice steady. And neither are they. The core went dark. Emergency lights flickered, then stabilized. The facility shuddered, not in rage but in failure. Luke stood, swaying slightly. I caught him without thinking, steadying his weight. That was reckless, I said. He looked up at me, breathless but composed. You covered me. Always, I replied, and realized I meant it. Around us, the mercenary moved to assist the newly freed, barking orders that weren't orders at all, just directions offered, not imposed. Shards, aligning, not because they had to, but because they chose to. Dawn found us on the edge of nowhere. The facility loomed behind the tree line, inert now. No lights, no hum, no sense of attention pressing at the back of my skull. Just concrete and steel, finally reduced to what it should have been all along. A place, not a presence. Mist clung to the ground, pale and cool. The air smelled like wet earth and burned circuitry. Somewhere in the distance, birds were trying out the morning, tentative and unsure. The survivors gathered in loose clusters near the vehicles we'd pulled together from whatever still worked. No lines, no formations, no one telling anyone where to stand. People talked quietly. Some cried, some just sat, staring at their hands like they were new to them. The mercenary moved through the group, efficient even now, handing out supplies, pointing out routes, making sure no one was left without options. When he reached me, he paused. You heading anywhere specific? He asked. I shook my head. Not today. He nodded once, satisfied. Good work. Then he was gone, engine fading into the trees. Others followed. One by one, choices made without pressure. Some left together, some alone. No one chased them. No one marked their absence as failure. Luke stood beside me, quiet as ever, watching the dispersal with an expression I couldn't quite read. You don't owe them anything, he said after a moment. I know, I replied. That was the strange part. I really did. A young woman passed us, limping slightly, supported by another survivor. She glanced at Luke, then at me, and gave a small, awkward nod, gratitude without obligation. It settled somewhere warm in my chest. The sun crested the horizon, washing the world in soft gold. The tension I'd been carrying for years finally loosened its grip, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion that felt earned. I sat down on the hood of a battered truck and let my shoulders slump. Luke joined me, close enough that our knees brushed. Not a claim, not a signal, Just proximity. You're quiet, I said. So are you. I considered that. The usual itch was gone. No pull. No hum. Just my own heartbeat, steady and unshared. I think I'm done running, I said. Luke's mouth curved, faint and genuine. That sounds tiring. I snorted softly. You have no idea. We sat there as the light grew stronger, saying nothing, letting the silence be what it was, open, unpressured. Behind us, the last vehicle pulled away. No one was left who didn't choose to be, and for the first time in a long while, the quiet didn't feel like emptiness. It felt like space. The city didn't care who I used to be. Morning traffic flowed like a living thing, impatient, loud, ordinary. Steam rose from street carts. Someone laughed too loudly on a corner. Somewhere above us, an apartment window slammed shut, starting an argument that had nothing to do with me. I liked that. I sat at a small outdoor table with a chipped surface and bad coffee, watching people move past without scanning them for threat vectors or usefulness. My phone lay face down beside the cup. No burner, no encrypted channels, no lists of names that weren't names. I wasn't assembling teams anymore. That realization landed quietly, without ceremony. No relief spike, no panic, just fact. Luke arrived 10 minutes late, carrying 2 pastries in a paper bag like it was the most dangerous thing he'd handled all week. They were out of the good ones, he said, handing me one. I made a judgment call. I trust your judgment, I replied. He paused, then smiled. Small, real. He sat across from me, close enough that our shoes brushed under the table. The city wrapped around us, indifferent and alive. You could still do it, he said after a while. The work. I could. I agreed. But I won't. No dramatic reason? He asked. I snorted. Don't ruin this for me. He broke the pastry in half, offering me the larger piece without comment. I took it, feeling something warm settle into place. Luke had options. People like him always did, whether they admitted it or not. Contracts, labs, quiet corners of the world where precision was currency. He hadn't asked me what I planned to do next. He hadn't asked where this was going. That mattered. I'm staying, he said, as if continuing a thought we'd both been having. With the city? I asked. With you, he corrected gently. If that's still open, there it was. Not a promise, not a claim, a door, held open without expectation. I met his eyes, feeling no pull, no compulsion. Just choice. It is, I said. We sat there a while longer, watching the city breathe. No shared pulse, no enforced rhythm. Just 2 people occupying the same stretch of time because they wanted to. I used to think a pack meant safety, that being bound was the same as belonging. I know better now. A cage can be warm. It can feel like home if you don't remember the sky. Luke stood, brushing crumbs from his hands. Come on, he said. I want to show you something. What is it? I asked, standing with him. He shrugged. No idea yet. I smiled, surprising myself with how easy it felt. Not a pack, not a cage, just a choice, made freely and again tomorrow.